All right. As we continue the training today, um, I just want to say that sometimes technology is great and sometimes it's not. Yesterday, I had finished recording all of what I was putting out for the training for this late start. And we had a power outage. And when I continued my recording, I felt that it was working correctly, but you could hear me talking, but you couldn't see the slides advancing. So here is part two. I was able to salvage part of a video. So that is what you saw hopefully first. And this is the second part to finish out the cultural competence training. Okay, so to continue on, I want to go to this document and talk about relevant curriculum. All right. In working with our students, it is important that we find out their interests. And one way to, or one tool that you may use is this tool here. And it's a student interest survey, talking about hobbies, what, when they're happy, their happiest when, their goals, their opinions, um, let's see, things that they will or will not miss about last school year, subject they love the most, subject they like the least. Okay. And you could do a reading inventory. So you could ask students, what books do they find interesting, and identify meaningful text for that students. I talked about in part one of the videos that it is important to talk to our students and find out their interests. And I was able to do that with a student I work, well, two of my students that I work with at the Innovation Center. And so we did a lesson today for one of them on basketball because that's their interest, and found a book. And I think I mentioned that the student doesn't like to read. And so it's my goal to help them become a lover of reading. And then the other student is interested in health and in the future wants to do something in the medical field. So I found a story for them on sleep and what not getting sleep does to our body. And then we found a book online about stress. So here is a reading interest survey that you may do with your kids. This may work better with a little bit older kids, but if you have younger students, you could ask them the question and fill it in. And then finding books that are affirming who the student is culturally. And if you can't find them in your library, there are some resources online where you can find books. One such resource would be, this says to go to Scholastic. You could go to Sora.com, and there are others out there. I will have to find, and I can send them out. Okay. All right. Moving on, the whole idea of doing that survey is student-centered instruction. The students are the reason for our jobs. We want to make sure that we are being student-centered and reflecting a student's preferred communication style and what the brain needs to move new learning from their short-term memory to long-term. When students engage in hands-on activities combined with opportunities to read, write, think, discuss, and reflect, it makes learning much more engaging. Engagement increases because students are at the center of the work. When all students have access to this kind of instruction, all students learn. And this is vital to remember because Not everybody learns in the same way. Some people are hands-on learners. Some people are visual learners. So it is important that we find out what works best for our students. All right. Differentiation. So, as educators, we are asked to differentiate for our students. And as a teacher, I know that sometimes that happens right in the classroom. Maybe starting with a lesson and realize, oh, the student needs a graphic organizer. I need to make sure that they have that. I need to be sure that I've pre-taught what the lesson is about and making sure that my student has some background information. So we want our students to be in an environment that encourages and supports their learning. And as educators, we can constantly formatively assess our students for learning, have them check in with us. We check in with them if we're working in small groups. And if they're just not understanding, then we need to, in the moment, sometimes figure out ways to help them understand a concept. We want to have quality curriculum, which I think we have. Instruction that responds to student variance. Again, making sure that we know we might have students who need to draw something out or students who need to build something. Okay. Assessment that informs instruction and learning, and then lead students to manage their routines. When we set up routines for our students, we know that so much of the time they are more apt to get right into the learning when they know what's expected of them. So setting those high expectations and then following through with those. We can differentiate through content, through the process, through product, environment, readiness. We can create lessons according to the readiness of the student. So if they're close to getting to that goal, and we can design curriculum around their interests and then their learning profile. So as we continue, these are some ways that we might plan to differentiate for our students. Do you have students who prefer to move and talk? So should you put them in pairs? Do they work better in that community setting? Are they shy? Do they need some encouragement to be able to work with other students? Or do you need to give them some time to think by themselves first and then be able to go and work with another student or group? Do they like to read graphic novels? There used to be a school of thought that graphic novels were not okay and that wasn't really reading. But what we've discovered is it really is. A lot of our graphic novels tell a story. Even if it is a graphic novel with all pictures, it is telling a story and giving our students access to different content and different adventures and different genres of books. So graphic novels really do serve a purpose, especially for our reluctant readers. And so that brings me, if they don't like to read at all, how can we plan for those students? Maybe making shorter reading assignments for them. Again, getting to know our students and focusing on topics that they enjoy. Are more than one grade level behind in math? How can you plan for that student? What kind of supports can you give them? And maybe you have students who are above grade level in math. So what can we do to scaffold and offer them some work that scaffolds up for them? Whose culture focuses on group success? I talked about previously in our training that sometimes our students come from backgrounds where they do work together and they don't come from a culture who is so centered on the self learner. So maybe that's providing those opportunities for group activities. Whose culture relies heavily on sharing information through oral storytelling. Storytelling is so important because it's becoming a lost art. Many of our Native American individuals who are elders in the Native American community are passing away. And sometimes those stories are not uh, facilitated to the next person. And that's so important that those continue because not every story is written down. And whose culture emphasizes competition and individual achievement. How do we work with those students and make sure that they are having the learning opportunities that they need? Okay. So I have some vignettes with some questions, and there are 4 vignettes, and I would like you, after you read the vignette, that you please answer the questions that are here. So I will read it for you, and then I want you to pause the video and please answer these questions on your Google Doc or your paper. I'm going to put it in present mode and hope that this doesn't mess up, and I apologize if it does. Okay, there we go. Fatima is a 13-year-old girl who recently arrived from Indonesia, excuse me. Fatima speaks Indonesian and Arabic at home with her parents and her little brother. Her mother enrolled her in a dual immersion program upon arriving in the United States, with the hope that Fatima will be able to improve her English as well as maintain her Arabic language. Her mother is pleased that the school district offers a dual language program in English and Arabic. When Fatima is with her 2 best friends, there is a lot of laughter. Today, the trio of girls is performing a play for their classmates. Fatima speaks rapidly and animatedly in Arabic. The story the girls have written is funny, and their classmates seem captivated by the story the girls have created. When Fatima's character speaks, she interjects English phrases. During the show, Fatima's character exclaims, "No way!" and "Let's go!" and "See you tomorrow!" During the girls' performance, they are expressive and talkative. Their classmates applaud loudly when the performance is over. Later in the morning, the teacher is reading with the class. They are reading a version of the Indonesian folktale, Deer, Mouse, and the Farmer, in English. Throughout the lesson, Fatima adjusts her hijab and seems distracted. As the lesson progresses, Fatima continues to sit quietly, sometimes appearing not to be paying attention. Each time the teacher asks a question of the students, the English-speaking students call out excitedly, sometimes speaking over each other. Fatima remains silent during this time. As the students leave for lunch, the teacher asks Fatima if she liked the book. She tells the teacher in Arabic what the story reminds her of home. When asked why she did not offer that observation during the lesson, she comments, "I understand the story, but I don't understand the words." In your learning group, which if you're working with others, this is fine to answer together. But if you're working by yourself, what strengths does Fatima bring to the classroom? If the teachers were to observe Fatima and her friends performing their play, what conclusion could they make about Fatima as a student and a member of the classroom community? And what changes can Fatima's teachers make to the lesson that would provide opportunities for Fatima to be more engaged and to participate in the discussion? So at this point, if you would pause the video and answer those questions, that would be great. Okay. Vignette number 2. Newcomer profile, Margaret. Margaret, a fourth grade student, loves to read and play the piano. Her parents, her 2 brothers, and she immigrated to the United States from England 3 months ago. In England, Margaret's mother was the head of the Human Resources Department for a successful publishing company. The company recently opened an office in the United States, and Margaret's family decided to leave England and become permanent residents here. In England, Margaret was popular and outgoing. She did very well in school. Her favorite class was math. Margaret played on a netball team, and she also played the piano. Margaret often draws in the library during recess, and she describes her friends in England and says she misses her teammates. They don't play netball here. All of the girls in my class here play on a softball team, but I don't play softball. Margaret's mother had told her that there would be a little difference between her life in England and her life in the United States. But Margaret is finding that this is not the case. First, Margaret says that the English is different. There are a lot of words I don't know, and when I first came, the other kids laughed at my accent. Sometimes I didn't understand them, and sometimes they didn't understand me. Second, Margaret was surprised that even though her favorite subject is math, she did not understand a lot of the math problems she had to do in class and for homework. The numbers are different. We use pounds in England, and here we use dollars. We use kilometers, and here we use miles. And I have to learn about pounds and ounces because all I know is that I weigh 6 stones. So now, if you will, pause the video and answer these questions. In what ways is Margaret's experience in school similar to that of non-English speaking immigrants? In what ways is it different? And what structures need to be in place to ensure that Margaret feels comfortable and safe in her new school? So again, if you've paused and answer those questions. All right. Vignette number 3, newcomer profile, Emilio. Emilio, a shy boy from Mexico, arrived with his family in the United States at the age of 5. He is now 12 years old and in the 7th grade. He has missed the past 3 days of school and has fallen behind on several projects. When asked why he missed school, he shrugs and says that sometimes he just can't take it anymore. His math teacher adds that she cannot understand why Emilio has not integrated more with the other students from Mexico, adding, "Over half of our student population is from Mexico." When Emilio is asked where he is from, he says he's from Oaxaca. The teacher thinks that all Mexicans are the same, but I am from Oaxaca, and they make fun of me. The they Emilio refers to are a group of fellow Mexican students who call Emilio and other students from Oaxaca names such as Indito, referring to the indigenous roots of many Oaxacans. Excuse me, I sometimes stumble over my words. When I speak Mixteco, they laugh at me and tell me I should go home. In middle school, the kids used to tell me I was dumb because I didn't speak Spanish. While many of Emilio's teachers do not know that this bullying takes place, the ESL teacher acknowledges the struggles that the students from Oaxaca face in school. Mexico is actually an extremely diverse country, and many students come to the United States not speaking Spanish or have parents who do not speak Spanish. There are racial and linguistic distinctions within Mexican society that we teachers are only now realizing. We used to think of our students as one big group, but that simply is not true. Emilio says he has learned some Spanish since coming to the United States in the 2nd grade and explains, when they find out I was from Mexico, they put me in class for Spanish speakers. Emilio laughs when he adds, I'm practically trilingual now. In your learning group, if you're working with others or by yourself, please pause and answer these questions. Because Emilio is from Mexico, certain assumptions are made about him by students as well as teachers. What were the assumptions and why were they made? Thinking of your own school and district, what assumptions are sometimes made about particular student populations? What are the consequences of these assumptions? And what steps can the school take to address the bullying of the Oaxacan students? All right. Vignette number 4. Newcomer profile, Igor. Igor grew up in Russia, where he attended school regularly, was an excellent student, and enjoyed his childhood and early adolescence. When he was 14, his family moved to New York. Igor had studied some English in school, but like the rest of his family, he knew only a few phrases. His father had been an elementary school teacher in Russia, but in New York, with extremely limited English skills, he could only get a job as a janitor in a department store. Igor's father studied English at night and dreamed of someday working in a school again. Igor and his family lived in Astoria, Queens, where they kept in close contact with the Russian community. At first, Igor attended a neighborhood high school, but a year later, encouraged by immigrant friends of the family, he transferred to an international high school at LaGuardia Community College, where he is a 17-year-old junior. At home, the family converses in Russian, and Igor, his 2 younger brothers, and his teenage friends speak Russian with the adults in the circle. Among themselves, they speak English. A warm, open, and energetic young man, Igor had made friends easily. At school, he speaks primarily English, except when he talks with other Russian-speaking students who are new to the school. His English has developed rapidly since his arrival, and he can read fairly well in English. He still does not understand everything in his school texts, but knows how to persevere and be patient. When he writes in English, he makes errors, but as he put it, he feels he has come a long way. Because he is doing well and he feels that he has enough of a foundation in English to succeed, Igor has decided to take the test for his GED rather than stay in school and graduate with his class. So, if you will pause and answer the following questions. What strengths and experiences does Igor have that helped him in being a successful student in the United States? What are some of the consequences for Igor leaving school with a GED? And what advantages might Igor have if he stayed in high school and graduated with his class? Okay, moving along. All right. Now we are going to talk about some cooperative learning jigsaws that show you how you could group students and different ways that you can incorporate for learning within your class or groups that you're working with. So this is the jigsaw strategy.
Jigsaw. Today, you are going to work in a group to learn information from a lengthy text, even without reading the entire passage. To start, everyone in the class will be given the same text. Then, each member of the group will be assigned a small piece of the text. Once you know what part of the text you are responsible for, start reading. Work independently. Look for key points, new information, and answers to questions. After everyone in the class is finished reading, you're going to meet in an expert group. The expert group is everyone in the class who read the same part of the text. In the expert group, ask each other questions, share your thoughts on the reading, and then when you're done, return to your original group. In the group, It is your job to share the important points about what you have read, then listen to the others in the group to learn what the rest of the text was about. As a group, make sure everyone knows everything about the text, because at the end of the activity, your teacher will assess your understanding of the entire text. Jigsaw.
All right. Jigsaw is a great strategy. It's even great for adult learners. If you have a article to read and you're at a training, a lot of times the jigsaw strategy is utilized even with adults. Okay. Moving along, here is some other strategies. Maybe. Oops.
Hi, we're from the Career Pathways for the Teaching Profession Foundations and Practicum class, or the teaching class. And we were really excited about collaborative learning strategies, so we wanted to share with teachers our favorite strategies as students.
Hi, my name is Taylor. My favorite learning structure is find someone who. Find someone who is when you find someone in the room that has something in common with you. I like it because you get to meet new people and possibly build better relationships.
Hi, I'm Monica, and my favorite collaborative learning structure is Inside Outside Circle. And after teaching a concept to students, you ask the students to reflect and think of 3 things they learned, or however structure you want to set that up. And you go into an open space and you have an inside circle and an outside circle, and the students rotate counterclockwise and then share with each other what they learned. It's a great way to formatively assess what students' understanding are at that time and then fine-tune your lesson to take care of any misconceptions. So I love Inside Outside Circle. I also love many more if you'd love to hear more about it. So in the Career Pathways for the Teaching Profession Foundations and Practicum class, also is a teaching class, we practice many of these every day. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Clara, and my favorite collaborative learning structure is Pairs Compare. Pairs Compare is when 2 people get together to create a solution to a problem, and then the pairs pair up with other pairs and share their solutions. I like Pairs Compare because you get a different perspective from all the different students in the class that maybe you wouldn't have thought of beforehand.
Hi, my name is Shelby, and my favorite collaborative learning structure is Corners. Corners is where you call each different corner of the room a different thing, and then the students go to the corner that they agree most with. I like this structure because it allows students to see different perspectives and get up and moving.
Thanks for listening today. Thanks for letting us share with you our favorite collaborative learning structures. Have fun at your Kagan conference, and I hope you take something with you that you want to incorporate in your teaching. Thank you.
All right. So again, those are cooperative learning strategies. So after watching that video, as an educator, I want you to think about what would you want to use with students, and also thinking about, of course, student-centered learning, the ones that you have chosen or think that you would want to use with students. What cultural elements does that activity center around? What cultural elements might be in opposition to that strategy? So students that might have a hard time with a particular strategy, and how might we help encourage them? And what might be challenging about engaging in this strategy for a student whose culture is rooted in collectivism or individualism? And there is this handout, Introduction to Cultural Identity and Diversity, Student-Centered Instruction. Try it out. So these are some of the cooperative learning strategies that you might utilize. Graphic organizers, jigsaws, think, pair, share. I like think, write, or draw, and then pair and share. This gives students an opportunity to either draw or write their answer before they go and get in with those pairs, so that they have something already to talk about. Okay. There are workshop models. I will let you guys read through this, but one thing to remember as an educator that works with students, differentiation for students is the use of whole group, small group, and individual tasks based on content and student needs. So you, as the educator, looks, watches, assesses to see, okay, what do my students need? Purposeful use of flexible grouping, teaching up. We want to scaffold up for students. We don't want to scaffold down. This gives them an opportunity to reach the goal or the criteria that you've set for the day. So just be sure that you are utilizing tools that help them achieve what it is that the class standard is for the day. At the core of quality teaching, it's designed to address learning and effective needs that all students have. An idea as old as effective teaching. Yes, definitely. Valuing and planning for diversity in heterogeneous settings. So multiple settings. Lessons designed around patterns of student need, a student-focused way of thinking about teaching and learning. Differentiation is not just tracking, it's not tracking students in classes by ability or putting them by ability. It's not ability grouping within a classroom. It's not mostly for students identified as gifted or student that it's not just for students with IEPs. Differentiation is for your whole class. You can design for these students, these students, these students. It just depends on the level of support. When I use scaffolds with my students, sometimes I have students that need extra scaffolding so that they can reach the standard that day. And then I have students that need just a little bit of scaffolding to help reach that standard. And sometimes students don't even need the scaffolded supports to reach the standards, but you have all of that throughout your room and you've assessed students so you know what to utilize. Okay, going back. All right. So now another scenario. Okay, this is an example of looking at a diverse student that you may have in a class. And this scenario was produced and put out by the Paraeducator Board. This was one that they had, and I thought it was a good one just to look at and seeing the differences sometimes between cultures. James is an African American student. His teacher is white. James was up and out of his seat, sharpening his pencil along with other students as the teacher was about to begin the lesson. She got his attention and said, "James, would you like to take your seat?" James said no and continued to sharpen his pencil. The teacher became outraged and sent James to the principal's office for being defiant. James was surprised and didn't understand why he was being sent to the office. When asked what happened, he said the teacher asked him a question and he answered the question. So something to think about here. Let's go to the next slide. So the teacher or the principal calls you in as a witness to help straighten things out. So I want you to think about, what do you think happened? What was James' perspective? What was the teacher's perspective? And how might you communicate the misunderstanding that occurred without throwing anyone under the bus? And how do you advocate for students? Well, you could say this. The teacher to James wasn't really asking a question or giving him a choice. She was giving an indirect directive. And those, if you study cultures, that is a feature of white middle class culture communication, where you might offer an indirect directive and a student might understand and follow the norm, quote unquote, that you feel is the norm if you came from that cultural background. However, James, an African American student in this scenario, comes from a community where he would recognize someone giving him a directive because it was direct. For example, James, take your seat, please, rather than a posed question with choices. The teacher assumed that James knew she was giving him a directive and he was consciously refusing to obey it. She interpreted his response as evidence of his intention to be defiant and oppositional. And in this case, the student in this scenario was not. He thought she was asking a question and answered it with no. So this scenario goes to show that sometimes we just need to step back and get all the evidence before we react. So again, if we have a student come to us from a culture that differs from a culture we grew up in, the way that we communicate with them might have to shift so that they will understand what we are asking of them. Okay. Next, we are going to talk about the changing American family. So along with different cultures and different students coming to us from different backgrounds, we have students who come to us from all sorts of different backgrounds. We have students that come from families that have mixed races. We have families that are from the LGBTQ community and students coming to school who need support from their teachers from all walks of life. So this video shows the changing American family, and we are going to watch it.
That's right, folks. Cheerios give you nourishment that counts, and it tastes so good.
Mothers have been feeding their families Cheerios for generations. So when General Mills ran this ad last year,
Dad told me that Cheerios is good for your heart. Is that true?
it seemed like a winning formula. A timeless cereal and a universal theme, love.
We saw this as one way to tell the Cheerio story in a very new, fresh, and interesting way.
Fresh and interesting, in part, of course, because the mother is white, the father is African American, and the little girl, well, she's just adorable. Mark Addix is Chief Marketing Officer at General Mills. He says the overwhelming response to the ad was positive, but there was hate-filled backlash on the internet, much of it overtly racist.
You got so many negative comments on the website that, as I understand it, you had to actually take down the comment section on the website.
We did. The Cheerios team took down the comments section because we thought there were some hurtful things, some things that weren't positive.
But that didn't stop General Mills from running this follow-up ad.
You know how our family has daddy and mommy?
On the biggest advertising day of all, Super Bowl Sunday.
You're going to have a baby brother.
And a puppy.
Did you ever think of backing down because there was a certain segment of society that was not accepting of this?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
These are scenes from American family life that General Mills commissioned Norman Rockwell to paint in 1938. But households today are looking less and less like these images from the last century.
The difference between family lives in 1965, let's say, and in today is enormous.
Johns Hopkins sociology professor Andrew Cherlin has been writing about the American family for over 3 decades.
We've just lived through a huge period of social change, and you know what? There's no reason to think it's at its end. I think it's probably still going on.
In fact, the change is unprecedented. Marriage recently hit an all-time low, but for those still tying the knot, more than 15% of new marriages are interracial or interethnic. As for raising kids, one-parent homes are on the rise, and the number of same-sex couples with children, though small, is the highest ever recorded.
Dinner time.
In the 1950s, the message was there's only one kind of family that's okay, and that's the married family a la Leave It to Beaver.
Girls are kind of lucky, don't they, Mom?
Why do you say that?
Well, they don't have to be smart. They don't have to get jobs or anything. All they gotta do is get married.
More than half a century later, we have Modern Family.
No, come on, we're just a new type of family. You know, they don't have the right vocabulary for us yet. They need one of us to be the mom.
So why does it have to be me? Do I wear a dress?
Well,
That's a nightshirt.
it's kind of saddening.
So we've gone from a situation where there was only one right way to have a family. That is, get married young, stay married, and have lots of kids, to diverse pathways.
We met in 1990, 24 years ago.
As soon as you met, as soon as you first really talked to each other,
Yeah.
you felt a spark.
Yeah, as soon as he
Monroe Moore and his husband, Lupe Perez, have a long history together, but they're hardly traditional. Their Asheville, North Carolina household is a true modern family. When did you, in your minds, become a couple that wanted to have a family together?
within the first month, because we both come from 6, so family is inside of us.
Moore and Perez, who were married in Vermont last year, still remember how excited and nervous they were when they adopted their first child in 2001.
And in walks this lady with this little bundle with a shock of black hair sticking out of it, and all of the waiting and all of the jumping melted away, and there was Maria, our oldest.
2 more children, Beatrice and Oliver, have joined the family too. What do you think of these 3 grandchildren that Monroe and Lupe have adopted?
I think they got the cream of the crop.
Even in a home where there's no conventional mother, there is a mom who plays a big role. 92-year-old Eleanor Moore loves to visit her son Monroe's family. There was a time when 2 men might not have been able to adopt children and raise them in a family.
When I was a child, there wasn't even a word for it. But it doesn't alter the fact that when 2 people love each other enough to spend their entire lives together, then I don't see that makes it a great deal of difference.
But much of America still doesn't accept same-sex marriage. It's legal in 17 states and Washington, D.C., and a court ruling this past Friday in Arkansas could clear the way for same-sex marriage there. But recall, even interracial couples on TV can draw a negative response. I guess the question is, are there 2 Americas these days?
There are certainly still 2 camps out there. A group who accept the changes and a group who don't.
Will you help with the Spanish? I cannot expect everybody to just change on a dime. It takes time. It takes people stepping forward and saying, we are no different than anybody else. This is our family. This is what we vision our family to be. And we aren't 2 Americas. We're one America going through a rebirth of who we can be for the future.
But whatever the future holds, certain basics seem here to stay.
What has stayed the same are the traditional values and desires to bring a family together, to nurture kids, to make them develop and be the people, everything they can be. That has not changed.
And on this Mother's Day, moms still play a central role in doing just that.
And for all our many blessings,
We thank thee.
What does it mean to be a good mother?
Oh my goodness. I guess just love them.
Amen.
No matter what.
That's the grade. That's the grade.
All right. So the Changing American Family video is part of the training put out by the Paraeducator Board because as we talk about cultural competence and a student's culture, there, as I said at the beginning of the film, students are coming from all different family structures. And our jobs as educators are to advocate for inclusive school environments that include everyone from all cultures, including our LGBTQ students or students that come from families of mixed races or backgrounds. And one thing to remember as educators, we aren't being asked to forfeit any beliefs that we personally have. And we're not asking people to promote an agenda, but we are just talking about this because we want to take a stand against anybody who is harassed, because that can damage them as they and their educational outcomes. If a student from a culture differing from someone else is bullied or harassed or not made to feel like they're a part of the community, and students should be able to come to school free of verbal and physical harassment. So we are asking that just no matter what our beliefs, that we have a right to exercise what we believe in, but we also have a responsibility to protect our students as they're here in front of us, and make sure that we are not by turning our head facilitating an environment where others would feel free to bully somebody that is different from them, whether that be someone that comes from an LGBTQ family, or someone who is or comes from a family that of a differing culture. We just want to stand up for our students and make sure that we are a united front so that they have a great education experience. That's what we want the outcomes to be. So how can you welcome and affirm different kinds of family structures? And how do we navigate differences in personal beliefs with the obligation to care for every student? Whether that student be from a single family, a family where they're being raised by grandparents, where they're being raised in non-traditional homes, homeless. How do we navigate how we feel personally and put that aside and see the child in front of us and give them a great educational experience, and then stand up for them if there is ever bullying or harassment. All right, so there are some things that you can do, and one of the things is journal of student successes. Keep a journal of your student successes, and it will give you a concrete example of your students' triumphs and opportunities to communicate with teachers. Oh, and then communicate with teachers about the strengths that you're seeing. So keep a good bit of a journal so that you can share. I like to, when I have my parapro meetings with my EL parapros, to call it Tell Me Something Good. So you could have your journal be a Tell Me Something Good journal. Keep learning. As educators, it is so important that you always strive to keep learning, try new things, expand your experiences and your knowledge. Go out of your comfort zone. It's okay to step out and learn about things that aren't the norm for you. It is amazing when you expand your learning. And I feel like I'm a lifelong learner. I love to keep learning. And be aware of current events and how they may impact your work. You work with students every single day, and they come to us with experiences that may be traumatic, and things that happen in the news may bring up something that's happened to them in the past. Maybe they have PTSD because of something that's happened where they're from or in their family, and they've heard of a current event that is affecting them in the class. So the importance of forming relationships with your students is so that you know who they are and what could be affecting them and why they're behaving in the way they are. Having relationships with students will increase the behavior that you want to see that's positive in the classroom. When we are not relational and don't get to know each other and our students, that's when we start seeing more of the behavior. So please be aware. Okay. All right. So we have covered a lot. We have explored culture, diversity. You all have done a lot of hard work and reflecting on what might be the impact of our deep culture on our work with students. And you have reflected on some possible personal biases that you may have. It can be emotional and it can be challenging, and that's okay. Sometimes working this hard on reflection and considering the implications for our students and the people around us can feel very heavy. So I want to have you write down 3 ideas that you learned, 2 questions that you might still have, and 1 aha moment that you had. And I just want to thank you guys for being a part of the cultural competence training and digging in to become more self-aware. And you guys bring so much cultural understanding to our environment. And I thank you. I thank you for the work that you do. And we will see you next time.